Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. It's your girl Amanda the author, and thanks for tuning in. Now today we're going to talk about what to do once you finish your draft. This is for my authors out there who are on the edge, on the precipice, adjacent to finishing their first draft of their very first book, or second, third, whatever, and are wondering what to do now. What do I do? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? What do I need? This is for you. But before I get started, if you are an author and you're looking for tips just like this video, if you're looking to learn more about all aspects of the authoring process, from book writing to marketing to how to have the right mindset for author success, because that's just as important, then I'd love if you could go ahead and subscribe to my channel and kick it with me every week. And also go ahead and give this video a nice thumbs up to help tip the algorithm gods in the favor of this beautiful baby YouTuber. And if you'd like to get a copy of my Witch Kind series, which is a new adult contemporary series featuring a witch and vampire feud, a witch fighting for freedom for his people, a vampire president, magical tattoos, and a whole lot more, you can find those links in the description. Or if you're in the mood for an anthology, looking for short stories full of magic and full of girls and women tapping into their own power, then you can find the link to Girls of Might and Magic in the description as well. You can also find links to my newsletter, to my social medias, so you can find out what I do outside of kicking it in these YouTube streets. Okay, picture this. You're sitting at your computer and you have just finished your first draft. You've typed the end, or maybe you've just typed the last sentence. You're probably filled with a huge wave of relief, of excitement, potentially a lot of other emotions. I know I always end up crying right after I finish my first draft because of how just monumental this marathon that I've just run, and I'm excited and relieved, and a lot of emotions are swirling inside me. Usually it's almost midnight, if not past midnight, on my deadline, so I'm tired as shit. I always end up crying, is what I'm telling you. But let's say you've just finished this draft, you're feeling emotional, and perhaps your first thought is, I did it. Holy moly, I did it. Maybe this is your first, or your third, or your 50th book. I think there's still a moment of, I did it. I accomplished something. Then perhaps your second thought is, okay, now what? What do I do with myself now? I usually end up having a feeling of not knowing what to do with myself after I finish the draft. So that's why I put together this list of 10 things that you should do right after you finish your first draft to help you along the road to publication. Now, these tips are good regardless of whether you're about to publish your first book or your 7th. However, these are more tailored towards indie or self-publishing authors. Some of these tips apply to those who are looking to become trad. So if that's you, I still recommend checking this video out because you might find a couple of tips that might help you along your journey. So the first thing to do is take a break. Yes, take a break. Whether you take a couple of days, a week, a month, definitely is very important to take a break from writing and give that muscle a rest. You wouldn't train really hard for a marathon, spend all this time training and training and training, run said marathon, and then the very next day go back to trying to run a marathon again. Or maybe you would, I don't know, but like, for why? It's important to give your brain a rest when it comes to writing, and just revel in the fact that you accomplished something huge. Not a lot of people can say that they finished a novel, and not a lot of people can say that they finished multiple novels. So definitely take a break and give yourself your flowers. Usually for me, I end up getting some champagne, I end up having a donut or some kind of dessert, something that makes me feel celebrated and loved. Step number 2 is decide on a publication date. Now, this is going to be dependent on a couple of factors. One shouldn't just say, this date, December 25th, I'm publishing on Christmas. It's dependent on a couple of things, including how long you want to give your beta readers to review your work, how long you want to give yourself for rewrites, whether you're doing multiple rounds of rewrites or if you're just doing one, if you want your beta readers to read your book after you do your rewrites, how long your editor needs to do however much editing you're paying them for. I do the full shebang, developmental, line, and copy. And just to give a brief overview of the different types of editing, So you do have developmental, and that's where your editor is looking at the story as a whole. They're looking at the plot, the pacing, the characters, if it's a mystery, the horror, all of that, and seeing if it makes sense, if it works as is, and kind of being able to then make recommendations based on that. If you need to update your characters, if you need to update the plot, the pacing, etc. Align editing is just what it sounds like, where they're going line by line through your book and making changes to the content, making edits, And then you have your copy edit, which is them going through and editing for spelling, grammar, syntax, etc. And then I mentioned the proofread. So you want to make sure that you build time for your editor to do all of this in there. You also need to build in time for your interior layout designer, whether you're going to pay somebody to do it or if you're going to do it yourself through a program like Vellum. You need to have time to be able to do that. You also need to have time for your cover designer to be able to design the cover, front and back, and then design the spine once you know your final page count. There are a lot of moving parts that go into self-publishing a book. These are just some of them, but these are the main ones that you need to consider when it comes to setting a publication date. You want to be able to pad enough time. Should your editor need more time? Should there be an emergency with them or any of the other people that you've outsourced? Should you get all of your beta feedback back and realize that you have a lot of rewrites to do? You essentially have to redo the entire book. You want to make sure you have enough time for that. You want to make sure that if your editor comes back to you with edits that you maybe need to fix or do, that you give yourself time there. Usually, one thing that can help you in this situation is to research industry standard timelines for editing, interior design, and copy and cover design. And when you are hiring these creatives, or if you have hired them already, be sure to ask how long it typically takes for them to do this. Usually an editor will base it on word count, but they can kind of give you a ballpark. So if you say my book's about 90,000 words, maybe your editor will say, okay, it's going to take me 12 weeks to do a full edit, dev, line, copy, what have you, and get this back to you. And, maybe that's them padding in time, a day off or two, or, an extra, maybe they need a little bit more time. Maybe they have multiple projects, whatever, right? That can help you decide on your publication date. Consider looking at what months are good for publishing what type of book. All of these things and more will help you decide on the perfect publication date for your book so that you can start setting in motion your pre-publication plans. The third thing you should do is send your book to your beta readers. Now, for those of you who are unsure of what a beta reader is and wondering if it's the same as an editor, the answer is it's not. There are similar things that betas and editors do, but it is very much not the same, and you should not use a beta reader for a substitute as an editor or an editor as a substitute for a beta reader. Usually your beta reader is somebody who is part of your target audience, or they're reading as though they are part of your target audience, and they are giving you honest and thorough feedback on your book. Generally, they're looking at the plot, the characters, the pacing, the different scenes in the book, how they all work together. They will make recommendations on continuity. So if you say one character has a limp in chapter 1 and suddenly chapter 4 they have no limp, part of a beta reader's job is to look for that and call that out. They can also help you distinguish your characters and let you know if you have multiple characters that are similar. And I talked about this as it relates to writing a large ensemble cast and what to do if you do have characters that your beta readers feel are similar. They can also give you recommendation on your villain. If you're writing horror, they can tell you the level of horror that your book is, if you need to ratchet up the tension. If you're writing a mystery, they can help make sure your mystery is not easily clockable within the first chapter. But beta readers are an invaluable resource that you should always employ, and they might be different depending on the genre you're writing in and depending on the book you're writing in. I think it's good to have a reliable pool of beta readers, people who have read your work. Certainly if you're writing a series, you might want to have the same beta readers because they've already read the first book and so they know what to expect. In terms of the amount of beta readers, I would say anywhere from 5 to 7. I wouldn't go more than that because, like that old adage of too many cooks in the kitchen, you might get a tremendous amount of feedback that might be difficult for you to suss out when you're doing your rewrites. But you don't have too little. Say you only have 2 beta readers and maybe they both liked your book a lot and had no notes. You want to make sure you get a good amount of people who are going to give you honest and appropriate feedback on your work. And how to make sure that that happens by giving your beta readers solid and clear direction. When I send my book to my beta readers, I always send an email with the document attached. I send it in a Google Doc so that they can leave comments. I also make sure in the body of the email to give some instruction. I say when I need feedback by. I say, please let me know when you've received this document. I also urge them to let me know if at any time they're unable to finish reading the book between the time they get the email and the due date. I also ask for specific things that I'm looking for that are tailored to the story. Another tip I'm going to sneak in here because it's really important is to try not to look at your beta readers' notes as they are leaving them. And like many things on this channel, this is a note for you, and it's a note for me, because it's something that I consistently do, and I keep trying to remind myself to stop doing it, because you can get in your head, you can get ahead of yourself and overwhelmed, anticipating all of this critique that you're getting, and if the critique isn't good, then it's already going to set you up for a lot of anxiety once you get the full shebang of your beta reader's notes back in, and once you sit down to do your rewrites. And I'm saying this based on the experience that I'm currently having right now. Tip number 4, decide on a budget for your book. Now, this is obviously tailored for my indie and self-published girlies, so it's very important to make sure you have a budget for how much you're going to pay for editing, interior layout, cover design. You need to buy ISBNs. You need to figure out if you're going to do any kind of paid advertising. So we're talking Facebook, Instagram ad, Amazon ad. If you're going to do something with written word media or BookBub ad, these are things to consider when you're figuring out the budget for your book. Now, deciding this budget will also inform how you price your book, because then you can determine how many books you need to sell in order to break even. And obviously, breaking even and then being able to make money on top of that is important. So deciding on a budget before you publish your book is essential, because it will do a couple of things. Number 1, it'll help you figure out your publishing team, right? Your editor, layout designer, and cover designer. It'll help you narrow down the most important elements in your marketing strategy. Let's say that you only have budget, or you only want to devote money towards an Amazon ad, then you can decide that you don't need to do the other things, which may feel like a load off. Number 3, it will help you decide on the pricing of your book. And that's incredibly important to get established pretty quickly, both the pricing for your paperback and ebook, and also factor in if you are doing an audiobook. That's an additional cost. So having all of this in mind before you start looking for editors and cover designers and all of that will help you make sure that you're not just falling for an editor who you really vibe with but is out of your price range. Tip number 5 is to find your cover designer. This is something I think you can do as you're writing your first draft, so don't feel like you have to wait until you finish publication. However, if you have written your first draft and you don't have a cover designer, now is the time to start finding your cover designer. Now, when it comes to figuring out what you want for your cover, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. For the cover for In the House of Transcendence, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted on the cover. And you'll be able to see that cover when I do a cover reveal. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and do that so you can see the cover before anybody else. However, for my series, I had no idea what I wanted for the cover. I didn't know at all. I just knew I wanted something that looked magical, that looked cool, that was eye-catching. And I think my designer did a great job capturing that. So it's important when you're at this stage to do market research to see what other covers are in your genre, how people are designing them, so that you can kind of be somebody that's fitting in there but maybe standing out a little bit too. Basically, you want people to be able to judge your book by its cover. People should have an idea of what type of book they're going to get based on the cover. And if you're unsure, one other thing you can do is put together a Pinterest board and start cycling through those images and putting them in maybe a separate board for your cover. Although I feel like a lot of authors at this point have already started putting together their book aesthetics, so draw on that also for inspiration. Step number 6, which is to find an editor. Now, I will say that of the different relationships that you have with the people on your publishing team, I think the relationship you have with your editor is a pretty important one. Obviously, you want to make sure that the people that are helping you publish your book are people that you kind of vibe with. I'm not saying you got to be friends with them. I'm just saying, why would you want to have somebody that you actively hate working on your book cover? So, make sure that you're vibing with your editor, because this is somebody that's going to be reading your book and providing ample and honest notes on pacing, on character, doing line edits. And even though you might think, oh, no ego tied up in this, mark it up with a red pen. You might just be surprised when you see the amount of edits that your editor does. I'm just saying. So make sure that whoever you hire as your editor is in your price range. Make sure that you've seen samples of their work before so you know that they're the real deal and that you like what they're doing. And also make sure that this is somebody, like I said, that you vibe with, because this is somebody that you'll potentially take future books to. It's important to establish a good rapport with your editor. I've had the same editor since 2020. She did To A Stare With Love, To Lars in Desperation. She edited my short story Funnel Cake for Girls of Might and Magic. She's going to edit in the House of Transcendence, and I've already told her about the third and final book in the Witch Kind series, which I'm hoping to be able to get out later this year. And so she's already primed and prepped to be reading that for me later this year as well. Step number 7 is to find a layout designer. Just like with your cover designer and editor, you want to make sure you have a good vibe, and you want to make sure that you are seeing samples of their work. I don't know that I mentioned that with the cover designer, so make sure with all of this trio of people, that you see samples of their work to know that you like what they're doing. You don't want to hire a cover designer and then not like their previous work or their style, because it's just not going to be what you want for your book cover. When it comes to finding a layout designer, make sure that they know that you're doing ebook and paperback, and if you have any little graphics that you're wanting to add at the beginning of the chapters, like chapter heads, make sure you provide that to them as well. Step number 8 is getting your ISBNs. Now, getting an ISBN is incredibly important. You don't want to get one from Amazon. You want to make sure that you do the work, you go to Bowker's, you go to where you need to go to get your ISBN and actually get one, and don't get the free one from Amazon. Because especially if you're going wide, getting a Amazon ISBN might be problematic for you. So ISBNs can be expensive. I can't remember the cost of it, but I ended up buying a 10-pack, so I was investing in my future there, and now I don't have to worry about buying an ISBN for at least a couple of books. They're usually active pretty quickly, so even if you end up getting your ISBNs like 2 weeks before you actually hit publish on Amazon, you'll be okay. But it is something very important to make sure that you have. Step number 9 is to write your book blurb. Now, what to include in your book blurb? This is definitely a confusing and fun, how do I make it all work kind of thing. I find that for a lot of authors, it is very difficult to try to talk about our work, to try to talk about our book succinctly and do an elevator pitch, do like a synopsis, something like that. Even I struggle with it, and I am a marketer. And I used to want to act. So that's another fun fact for y'all. So I also struggle with figuring out my book pitches and book blurb. But it's important that you write it, obviously, ahead of publication, but that you write it sooner than later so that you can use it in your marketing. So obviously, some things to include is you want to have some kind of hook, potentially end with some kind of question, especially if your book is thriller or fantasy or mystery. Will so-and-so be able to save the world, or will their own crippling anxiety and imposter syndrome prevent them from succeeding and saving the human race? Whatever, right? You want to make sure you capture some important information. You don't want to give the ultimate, gag of the book, the mystery, the whatever, the will they or won't they get together of it away. And you want to kind of make sure that people can understand who your main character is, at least a little bit. in your book blurb. And finally, step number 10 is to develop your marketing plan and start implementing it. So it's like a 2-part step. So book marketing is scary. It can be very scary because I think naturally it's difficult to talk about ourselves, to put ourselves out there as oh, this is something I made, you should buy it. And also, how many times have we seen book marketing done wrong? How many times have we seen authors only post buy my book. And I'm not talking about promos that are a little more inventive. I'm talking about legit, like dead ass, just saying buy my book. This book is on sale, buy this book, You have to diversify the kind of content that you're putting out there when it comes to promoting your book, but that's for another video. So some of the things that you can do in terms of your book marketing, which again, it's important to be doing your book marketing even before you publish your book. So this marketing plan isn't just a book release plan. That's a separate bit of marketing that you should be planning, and that's also a separate video. So when it comes to your marketing plan, leading up to your book publication and even after, some really fun things that you can do that will get people excited about your work are doing a title reveal, if you haven't already, doing a cover reveal, and revealing the publication date. You can do all of these things at the same time. You can slowly drip the content out. Maybe 1 week is title, another week or so is cover, another week is publication date. You can even reveal the title, wait till you have the cover, and then reveal the cover when you get it. You can do countdown type posts, 3 months until such and such is published, 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, etc. That will really help build excitement for your book being published. You should, at this point, be researching Facebook, Instagram, BookBub ads, written word media, also like on Free Booksy, Book Barbarian. You should be researching that. You should research doing newsletter swaps on Story Origin or BookFunnel. And, that way you can get a universal book link of your book out to other people's readers. So that's another thing that you can do after your book is published, but start planning that now. You can do so many different types of social posts, including character aesthetic videos or boards, book aesthetic videos or boards. You can do a One-Line Wednesday and publish a snippet of your work. So many people are doing that now. I feel like One-Line Wednesday went away and kind of stopped being the thing people were doing, and now it's come back, like way back. So that's another thing you can do. You can also do fun videos on TikTok and do fun reels of, POV, my main character says da-da-da, and kind of do a skit or play some kind of song over that. During this time, you can also find a street team and establish that. And a street team is basically a group of people who agree to help promote your book and help you shine. And this is also good to have as part of your publication launch plan, because these people can help post your cover reveal. They can help do the countdown day posts. They can help post your book on the day that you publish it, right? So that your book is in a lot more people's faces. Now, these are a lot of steps. It's a lot of things that you must do when you are indie/self-published. So I'm not going to sit here and try to front like it's not a lot, because it is. And it can be very overwhelming. So I highly recommend putting together something that will help you keep track of all of these steps and help keep you organized. An Excel sheet, a Google sheet, project management tool like Asana. Asana is probably my favorite. I did a video a while back about tools that I used to help me publish. So I do talk about Asana quite a bit, but it's a free tool to use to help keep track of all of your to-dos. So I highly recommend it. You can use Trello. There's so many other tools like that. Or you can have a notebook. Just make sure you have an account of all the different things that you need to do. And it's also important that you try to set your publication date out far enough ahead to allow yourself to get through all of these different things, especially if you're somebody who has other commitments. It's important to give yourself the space and enough time to accomplish these things in a reasonable time frame. reasonable. We are not about burnout on this channel. I'm not about you pulling all-nighters for a week straight to get stuff done. I definitely think that you should be putting your mental health and your physical, like bodily health before anything else. And because of that, it's important to make sure that you're setting realistic deadlines for all of these different things. I hope that these tips have been helpful to you. I hope that, I didn't overwhelm you or make you feel like there's so much to do, I don't want to do it, because that's not what this is. It's just helping you get prepared for your upcoming journey. And eventually you'll be a pro, and eventually you'll have an idea of the different steps. Quiet as this kept, I'm about to publish my 3rd book, and I even kind of blanked on all the different steps I had to take along the publication journey. So, it's always good to have refreshers. If you want a little bit more writing advice, like how to write large casts, how to write villains, or if you want to find out some book marketing mistakes you might be making, check out some of the other videos on my channel and my writing advice and also book marketing playlists. I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and if there are more types of videos like this that you'd like to see from me, please leave a comment and let me know. I would love to hear from you. Anyway, I'll catch y'all later. Bye!